There comes a moment in every life when the old gods die, when the beliefs you were given no longer hold you, when the truths you inherited feel like cages, when the comfortable lies that once sustained you crumble to dust in your hands. Picture it. You wake one morning and the prayers feel hollow. The moral commandments that once seemed absolute now seem arbitrary. The meaning you were promised feels borrowed, secondhand, insufficient. You stand at the edge of everything you once knew, and beneath your feet, you feel it giving way. It is in this moment that Nietzsche's voice breaks through history, not as a scholar in dusty libraries, not as a philosopher in comfortable classrooms, but as a wild prophet standing on a mountaintop, his hair whipped by mountain winds, his eyes blazing with terrible truth, announcing both the death of God and the birth of something new, something dangerous, something necessary, the Übermensch, the one who dares to become more than man, the one who creates rather than inherits, the one who dances in the ruins of certainty. Thus spoke Zarathustra, and his words still echo, still challenge, still terrify, because what he offered was not comfort, what he offered was transformation. Tonight we descend into that mountain cave with Zarathustra. We hear his proclamation, we feel the ground shake beneath us, and we must choose. Will we cling to the familiar corpse of meaning, or will we dare to forge something new? Nietzsche's Zarathustra begins with a cry that shook the foundations of the modern world. God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. But listen carefully. This was not the gleeful atheism of a rebel. This was not the sneer of an intellectual showing off. This was a diagnosis, a terrible recognition, like a doctor announcing a death that has already occurred, but that the family refuses to acknowledge. For Nietzsche saw what others could not yet see, that the old foundations of morality, the old pillars of meaning that had held up civilization for centuries, were already collapsing. The scientific revolution, the industrial age, the rise of reason, all had quietly undermined the ancient certainties. We had killed God not with arguments, but with indifference, not with rebellion, but with reason, not with hatred, but with the slow erosion of faith that comes when people stop needing God to explain their world. And when God dies, what dies with him? Everything. Right and wrong, good and evil, all fall into the abyss. The moral law becomes arbitrary. Purpose becomes meaningless. Truth becomes relative. Man becomes nothing. But here is where Nietzsche differed from the pessimists of his age. He did not weep at God's funeral. He did not see this death as the end of everything. He saw it as the greatest opportunity in human history. The death of God was not the death of meaning. It was the clearing of the ground, the burning away of the old growth, so that something greater, something more honest, something more human could finally rise. When gods die, Zarathustra proclaimed, men must become gods. But what is man in this godless universe? What are we, if not God's children? What are we, if not the crown of creation? Nietzsche's answer was both humble and terrifying. Man is nothing final. Man is not an end in himself. Man is a transition, a bridge, a dangerous crossing. Man is a rope, Zarathustra declared, tied between beast and Übermensch, a rope over an abyss. Think about this image for a moment. We are not solid ground. We are not a destination. We are a precarious crossing point, stretched thin between what we were and what we might become. Behind us lies the beast, our animal nature, our instincts, our biological drives. The part of us that seeks only survival, comfort, reproduction. The part of us that follows the herd, that seeks safety in numbers, that would rather be warm and fed than free and awake. Ahead of us lies the Übermensch, the possibility of human beings who create their own values, who affirm life without illusion, who dance in the face of meaninglessness and find their own music. But between these 2 points stretches the rope, and to walk this rope is the most dangerous thing a human being can do. There is no safety net below. There is no guarantee of success. There is risk, failure, vertigo, and the constant terror of the abyss. Most people, Nietzsche knew, would never step onto this rope. They would remain safely on the side of the beast, content with their animal comforts, their inherited beliefs, their second-hand meanings. But some, the few, the brave, the necessary, would dare to walk across. These are the ones who evolve. These are the ones who become. But what drives this crossing? What force propels us from beast toward Übermensch? Nietzsche called it the will to power. Not power over others, that is the will of the weak, who can only feel strong by making others feel small. The will to power is something deeper, the fundamental drive to grow, to overcome, to create, to become. It is the force that makes the flower push through concrete, the artist suffer for beauty, the philosopher question everything comfortable. It is the voice within you that whispers, "You are not yet who you could be." This is not enough. There is more. Every great achievement in human history has been an expression of the will to power. Every work of art, every scientific breakthrough, every moral revolution, all driven by individuals who refuse to accept the world as they found it. But here's the crucial point. The will to power is not satisfied with external conquest. Its highest expression is self-conquest, self-creation, self-overcoming. The ultimate power is not the power to dominate others, but the power to dominate yourself, to overcome your own limitations, your own fears, your own inherited weaknesses. So what, then, is this Übermensch? What is this overman that Zarathustra heralds? First, understand what it is not. It is not a blonde Superman of Nazi fantasy. It is not a tyrant crushing others beneath his will. It is not a person of superior race or breeding. The Übermensch is something far more radical. It is a human being who has learned to create values instead of inheriting them. For thousands of years, human beings have looked outside themselves for meaning, to gods, to kings, to priests, to traditions, to holy books. We have been told what is good and what is evil, what is meaningful and what is worthless, what is sacred and what is profane. The Übermensch looks inward, not because he is selfish, but because he understands that in a godless universe, human beings must become the source of their own values. He is the artist of existence. He does not wait for meaning to be handed down from heaven. He forges it himself, hammering his soul on the anvil of experience, tempering it in the fire of suffering, shaping it with the hammer of his will. This is why Nietzsche's vision is so terrifying to most people. Because to become the Übermensch means to kill every comforting illusion. It means to face the abyss of meaninglessness without flinching. It means to take full responsibility for who you are and who you become. There is no God to blame for your failures. There is no devil to blame for your evil. There is no destiny to blame for your fate. There is only you and your choices and the values you create through living. The Übermensch is the human being who can bear this responsibility not with grim resignation, but with joy, who can look at the chaos of existence and still choose to dance. But Nietzsche did not stop there. He had one more test, one final challenge for those who would claim to affirm life. It came in the form of a thought experiment that he called the most terrible and beautiful idea ever conceived: eternal recurrence. Imagine, Zarathustra whispered, that this life you are living right now, every moment of it, every detail, every breath, imagine that you had to live it again, and again, and again, for all eternity, every joy you have ever felt, but also every pain, every triumph you have achieved, but also every failure, every moment of love, but also every moment of despair, every kindness you have shown, but also every cruelty you have committed, all of it, exactly as it happened, repeated endlessly, without the possibility of change, without escape, without the hope of improvement. Could you bear it? Could you affirm it? Could you say yes, not only to your pleasures, but also to your suffering? Not only to your successes, but also to your mistakes? This is the ultimate test of life affirmation, because it's easy to love life when things are going well. It's easy to say yes to existence when you're happy, but can you say yes to your worst day? Can you affirm your deepest pain? Can you embrace your greatest failure? The Übermensch is the one who can look at the totality of existence, in all its horror and beauty, in all its tragedy and comedy, and say without reservation, "Do it again. All of it. Forever. And I will not only endure it, I will celebrate it." Zarathustra taught that the human spirit must undergo 3 transformations on its journey from slavery to freedom. First, the spirit becomes a camel. The camel is the beast of burden. It kneels down and asks, "What is the heaviest weight I can bear?" It loads itself with all the values of its time, all the commandments and traditions and expectations. It carries them across the desert of life without questioning their worth. Most people remain camels their entire lives, proudly bearing the burden of inherited meaning, never asking whether these weights are worth carrying. But some camels, in the desert of their solitude, transform into lions. The lion learns to say no. It roars against the old values, tears apart the inherited commandments, destroys the idols of its fathers. The lion is the destroyer, the skeptic, the rebel. It clears the ground by saying no to everything it once accepted. But the lion, for all its power, cannot create. It can only destroy. To create, the spirit must undergo one final transformation. From lion, it must become a child. The child is innocence and forgetting, a new beginning, a game, a self-propelled wheel. The child does not carry the weight of the past. The child does not roar against the old gods. The child simply plays, creates, becomes. This is the final stage of human development, to become like children again, but children who have passed through the desert of questioning and the flames of destruction. Children who create not from ignorance, but from wisdom. You may not be a philosopher. You may not stand on mountains like Zarathustra. You may not hear prophetic voices in the wind. But you, too, live in the aftermath of God's death. You, too, inhabit a world where the old certainties have crumbled. You, too, must choose between the comfort of inherited meaning and the terror and exhilaration of self-creation. Every time you follow a rule without questioning why, every time you seek approval instead of authenticity, every time you look for your purpose outside yourself, every time you cling to beliefs that no longer serve you, you remain a camel, bent beneath the weight of borrowed values. Every time you rebel without knowing what you're rebelling toward, every time you destroy without creating, every time you say no to everything but yes to nothing, you remain a lion, powerful in negation but impotent in creation. But to live, truly live, to step onto Zarathustra's rope, to risk the abyss, to become the artist of your own existence, is to become a child again. A child who creates values through living them. A child who finds meaning by making meaning. A child who affirms life so deeply, so completely, that even if it returned unchanged 1,000 times, you would not curse it. You would bless it. This is what Nietzsche offers you. Not comfort, but challenge. Not answers, but the courage to live the questions. Not certainty, but the strength to create in uncertainty. Thus spoke Zarathustra, not to the weak who prefer their chains to freedom, not to the fearful who choose security over growth, but to those who dare, to those who sense that they are not yet what they could be, to those who feel the rope stretched beneath their feet. The death of God was not the end of meaning. It was the beginning of human responsibility for meaning. It was the invitation to stop being children, waiting for a parent's guidance, and become adults capable of guiding themselves. Zarathustra descended from his mountain not to comfort us, but to challenge us, not to give us new commandments, but to teach us that we must become the commanders of our own souls. The abyss still yawns beneath us. The rope still stretches over the void. The choice still confronts every human being. Will you remain safely on the side of inherited values, or will you step onto the rope of becoming? Will you content yourself with being human, or will you dare the transformation towards something more? The Übermensch is not a destination. It is a direction. It is not what you achieve, but what you become in the striving. So ask yourself tonight, are you content to remain as you are, or will you walk the rope, stare into the abyss, create your own values, affirm your own existence, and become what you must be? The choice is yours. The rope awaits. And in the darkness below, Zarathustra's laughter echoes still, calling you forward, calling you upward, calling you to become.